Nearly every single day, someone is asking me this question.
Cody, how much can I charge as a freelance software engineer?
Cody, you're a great guy, the best guy. But I got to ask, how much am I worth as a freelance engineer?
And instead of actually answering every single question all the time, I want to answer all of them with this video. I'm going to talk about how you can charge anywhere between $0 an hour all the way up to $1,000 per hour and well beyond that. Each section of the journey, I want to give you examples to show you what kind of clients and what kind of work looks like at that rate so that we can all have an idea of where we can charge based on what I've given you today. So I want to show examples of like what the work might look like. And also when you get to over $1,000 an hour, to show these two examples of people that are charging well above $1,000 an hour and how you could eventually get there. But first, let's start at $0 an hour. Congratulations, you're working for free. I feel very conflicted about the kind of advice for this category because there are use cases where you should. You can do it just to like start your portfolio, to like get your first client and do some real work. You can also do this when you're well established in your career. You might want to give some free work or greatly discounted work to get into the system and get to know the client, because there could be more work in the future that you want to build up towards. And if you take a small price or do something for free at first, then you might have years worth of work in the future that you can really buy yourself into. And after you've proven yourself with that first project, but you still got to be cautious, because if you're doing work for somebody, you should be paid for it. And I feel like I feel very strongly about that. Okay, let's talk about $25 to $50 an hour. Now, this is still like you're a junior or like a mid-level software engineer, and you can code, but you still probably need guidance from a senior engineer or a lead that is guiding the project to be able to give you the right work that we know you can execute on. And at this stage, you should be learning as much as possible to gain as much skills as you can to be as independent as possible. So in this area, you're probably like subcontracting under someone else that you know, or you're using Fiverr or Upwork or some of those bigger marketplace apps where those projects are very clearly contained and they know what you need to do, and it doesn't take a huge amount of creativity. You can get a lot of experience that way, but the idea is to be at this area for as little as possible as you gain more experience. Okay, now let's look at $100 to $125 an hour. At this point, you're probably a senior engineer, and the idea is that they can give you a job and you can get it done. They trust that you will know how to solve problems. If you get stuck, how to unstick yourself, how to get unstuck. And this is where you start getting a lot more freedom, because a lot more people would want to have this done and pay this amount of money so that they know it will get done. You can do this from subcontracting to agencies. You can charge this rate when you're working with legacy systems that you've never been into, but they know that you can just dive in and understand quickly and be able to solve the problem as fast as possible. These kind of clients are probably going to be at bigger companies that are able to have a larger system that they need a senior engineer to diagnose and add on to. So that's what you should expect around this price range. So if we get to like $150 to $200 an hour, at this point, you're probably hired on to lead a project and a team, probably. The idea is at this stage, you're able to take complex requirements from the user and break them down to chunks of work so that people on the team know what to do and what they're building towards. These will be much larger contracts from like agencies or consultancies that have really big projects that are actually integrated with much larger systems. And it takes a lot of experience and also leadership to be able to break this down and guide a team to finish the project the way it needs to be done. All right, if we look at $250 an hour, at this point, you're probably like a specialist. You're specializing in a certain technology, a certain part of the technical stack that very few people can actually compete with you on. Like database performance, like if big enterprise clients have a really hard time getting their databases to run smoothly, the idea is that there are some really big problems that only a few people have the experience and the specialty to be able to solve. And you're one of them to be able to dive in and solve the problem that their current staff is not able to actually do. A lot of areas in performance to make sure that their applications and their entire systems are running faster would be a good area to specialize in, because you have to know the technology, but you also have to know it intimately to know the gotchas and be able to tweak a few knobs here and there and make it run faster. So I want to have a quick intermission about this whole idea of how much you should charge for your freelancing work. And there is some idea that I am worth this amount of money, but I want to talk about the other side of the equation, because not everyone is going to be able to have the same budget. So when you're charging money to a customer, it depends on the size of the project. The company and what their budget is, that's a big influence. And what the work actually is. You don't want to be charging $1,000 an hour for changing text on a WordPress site. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't go well together. So with that being said, so as you grow in your freelancing career, you have to keep that in mind to be flexible about what the work is, what you're willing to get paid to do that kind of work, and hopefully have a negotiation and build a relationship with these clients so that you can have a long running relationship and have more work running in the future. That's the main goal, so that you're able to do this long time and be more sustainable. Now, if you get to the stage where you have so much work coming through your door and no matter what you charge, customers don't go away, that's when you can start having the conversation of being like, my rates are $200 an hour. And if some people go away, that's fine because there's still work coming in. And then you say, my rates are $250 an hour. When you have so much work you don't know what to do with, that's when you start raising your rates and you start creating that bottom of this is what I'll work for. Because at this point, saying no to work and putting a rate that's too expensive for some people is not going to hurt you in the long run because you have so much work coming in. That's when you can start thinking about this is my minimum rate. Until then, we have to be flexible and we got to figure out what the work is, what the client is doing, and whether or not you're willing to work for that rate. And that's going to open a lot more doors in the future and have a more sustainable business practice when doing that. So when I think of like $500 an hour, at this stage, you're an expert in the field in some area. And what you can do for clients is find bigger organizations. You can provide a service, talk about strategy and guidance of like what they can do as an organization and speak to the things that you are really good at. You can think of this as a bunch of different areas. You can give talks about the topic that you're very much an expert on. You can give workshops where you're trying to level up a bunch of people on a team, where a company is paying you on a week-long basis to help train their employees. And this can also be bigger scoped where it's more, where the product is more crafted for the company and you talk about strategy, you talk about guidance, you have the experience to talk about how to move forward in the best way to save the company money and make them more resilient in the future when it comes to software engineering. And the hopes here of like when you're at this stage is that you're able to build up a general like knowledge base or like a course or a workshop or a way of like training people and build it up in such a way that you can reuse that. And if you're able to do that, you can just recycle and repeat for as many companies as you can. So you can charge as many customers that $500 an hour, or you can even put it into a package deal. We're now at the main event. So over $1,000 an hour. This is where people are kind of bending the laws of like what it means to like charge per hour and trying to make the most out of your time. And in my eyes, it kind of boils down to two different buckets. One bucket is like a retainer where you productize your service and you have a client spend so much a month. And the other bucket is when you actually build a product that you are selling, whether that be like software as a service, a PDF, a video course, something in that area where you put up a lot of upfront work. And I'm going to go into both categories real quick. So when you productize your service, there's this idea of a retainer. And a retainer is that like you will be essentially on call for this service at any given point. And what they do is they pay a flat monthly fee. Let's say $2,000 to $3,000 a month. And the idea behind this is that companies, even when some companies like need problems to be solved, they are very hesitant to hire a new person because that could cost anywhere between $200,000 to $300,000 for a good engineer per year, because it's harder to make a case to fire them later on. The idea of retaining a service is that you're much cheaper than that full-time person, but they just have work for maybe half the time. And you want to make sure that both parties are satisfied with how much you're able to do a month and the fact that you have a steady income this way. An example might be is just general maintenance. There's a lot of applications out there that there's a lot of engineering spend to create the product, but after you reach that MVP and it's working in production, not every company is constantly iterating and growing that. It works. It works. You're not done, but like it's working. And so the idea of having a staff to maintain it the whole time is an expensive thought. So sometimes it's easier for the company just to have someone be there to maintain. That's an idea for like a retainment of your services as a software engineer. And for a product, a lot of you may already know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like online courses. If you build a bunch of videos and content to sell online, you did a lot of work up front. So after all this upfront work, there's very little effort to put this content into other people's hands, paying customers' hands. This can also be software as a service, for example. So you could build a product that solves a business's problems that a lot of businesses may run into, and it may take a ton of time where you're not getting paid to make it come off the ground and actually work. But the last little bit, maybe it takes you an hour to talk to a customer. Maybe it takes like an hour or two for you to integrate into their systems, and then they pay you just to have that service be running. So let's talk real world examples. When I'm talking about productizing the services that you have, a great example is this guy called Brett from DesignJoy. Now I know if someone's already heard of him, he is a designer and he productizes his designs and has monthly paying customers for his work. Now I know design isn't engineering, but a lot of the same principles can translate into what you can do in engineering. You just gotta find and productize what you are good at and be able to find paying customers that will pay a monthly retainer so that they can have you on staff. And Brett, for example, he's streamlined it so well that he is bringing in $100,000 a month as a one-man design agency. And again, I know that's design, but I know that there's translations that can be done with software engineering. And in this other category of like building a product, one of the best indie hackers, as some people call it, is Peter Levels. He has built many different SaaS products and different websites. He's built so many products and websites that he's currently making around $3 million a year. $3 million. And if we look at his Twitter account, I'm not saying X is stupid. If we look at his Twitter account, he talks about how he's making $63K for his photoai.com. Interior AI is making about $50K a month. Nomadlist is making $45K a month. Remote OK, $51K a month. And I'm positive he has other income streams, but all in all, he has productized, he's created a product, a website, or something that provides a service or value to people that he's able to launch, and the maintenance to keep those going is very minimal. And it's just him and maybe a couple other contractors that he hires out. But this should be inspiration to build your own thing and hopefully have it lift off and turn into something. All right, I hope this is somewhat helpful for everyone that's thinking about freelancing or like what they can charge throughout the whole range of rates and what this life kind of looks like as far as how much money you can make. So if you made it this far, put a ghost in the comments. I think that would be fun. And also, let me know if there's any other questions or any other ideas that I looked over about how to become a freelance software engineer and how much they can charge and how much you can make. I can talk about this for hours and hours, and I'd love to hear about people's feedback of this kind of video and what I'm missing. So that's all I got today. I'll see you on the interwebs.